All right. Ready to dive into something we all think we know, but maybe, yeah, maybe don't. Stretching.
Yeah, stretching.
We've got this video, The Science and Benefits of Stretching. And
Okay.
it really gets into like why it's so much more important than just like touching your toes.
It's funny. We treat it as an afterthought or something just for athletes.
Right.
But the science really shows that it's crucial for everyone, no matter how active you are.
Exactly. And one of the biggest myths that this video busts
Hmm.
is that our muscles are like rubber bands
Right.
snapping back into place.
Yeah.
Turns out they're more like memory foam.
Ah, the memory foam analogy. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
And that gets right to the heart of why stretching is so beneficial. It all comes down to this property. It's called viscoelasticity.
Okay. Viscoelasticity. Now, I'm no scientist,
Yeah.
so break that down for me. What does that even mean when we're talking about our muscles?
Basically, it means that how a muscle responds to stretching depends on two things. One,
Huh.
time, and two, the amount of force applied. It's like when you press your hand into memory foam.
Yeah.
It sinks in slowly and then it takes a while to kind of bounce back.
Right.
Our muscles are kind of similar.
So that's why we need to hold stretches for a bit and not just kind of bounce in and out of
Yeah,
it.
precisely. That consistent force over time, that's what actually allows the muscle to lengthen
Okay.
and adapt. And here's where it gets even more interesting. This viscoelastic nature also leads to something called hysteresis.
This is Teresa's. All right.
Ah,
I'm all ears, but you might need to explain that one like I'm 5.
all right, okay. Think of it this way. When you stretch and then you release a muscle, some energy is lost as
Oh.
heat, kind of like when you rub your hands together. And
Yeah.
that's hysteresis. And it's actually, believe it or not, a good thing.
Wait, energy loss is a good thing. How so?
Because this energy loss, in the form of heat, it actually helps absorb shock and protect your joints when you move.
Oh.
Imagine catching a heavy ball. Your muscle's ability to stretch and lose a bit of energy as heat, that helps soften the impact, right?
No, I never thought of it that way. So our muscles are like built-in shock absorbers.
They are.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. And it just highlights how stretching isn't just about flexibility. It's about protecting our bodies from just daily life.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that this video debunks some myths about stretching.
Yeah.
One I've always heard is that if you don't stretch, your muscles will actually shorten over time.
Mhm.
True or false?
False.
Really?
Yeah. While it may feel like that's happening,
Right.
it's not that muscles are actually shrinking. What's going on is that they become less adaptable
Okay.
to stretching if you don't do it regularly.
Okay, so if our muscles aren't literally shrinking, why is stretching still so important?
Because stretching does something even more remarkable.
Hmm.
It actually increases the number of sarcomeres.
Sarcomeres.
Yeah.
Refresh my memory on what those are again.
So, sarcomeres, think of them as the tiny building blocks of muscle contraction.
Sure.
The more sarcomeres a muscle has, the longer it can become, and
Yeah.
that means a greater range of motion, greater potential for strength.
So more sarcomeres equal stronger and more flexible muscles.
Exactly. And this is especially important as we age. Maintaining that range of motion through stretching can help prevent stiffness.
Right.
Those aches and pains that tend to creep up as we get older. It can even help prevent conditions like osteoarthritis,
Wow.
allowing us to stay active and independent longer.
It's funny. I always thought of stretching as something you do just to touch your toes or avoid injury.
Yeah,
I never connected it to aging well.
that's a common misconception.
Yeah.
It's really about keeping your body adaptable and resilient for the long haul.
This is already changing the way I think about stretching. It's not just about flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's about building like a stronger, healthier body for the future.
Exactly. Now, let's move beyond just the muscle fibers themselves. Okay.
What's happening with our tendons and collagen when we stretch?
Okay, I'm all ears. What's the scoop on tendons and collagen?
So tendons, right? They're those tough, fibrous cords that connect our muscles to our bones.
Yeah, okay.
And they're made mostly of collagen, which is a protein that gives them, strength and elasticity.
So when we stretch, we're actually affecting those tendons too, not just the muscles themselves.
Absolutely. And the really cool thing is that stretching can actually help to remodel and strengthen those collagen fibers.
Okay, I'm picturing collagen as those strong, rope-like fibers that hold everything together.
Yeah.
So stretching makes them even stronger.
Yeah, that's a great way to visualize it. And not only stronger, but also more elastic. Think of it like a spring.
Okay.
The more elastic the tendon, the more energy it can store and release,
Hmm.
which makes our movements more powerful and efficient.
So it's like stretching gives us like a double whammy of benefits, stronger muscles and more resilient tendons.
Exactly. Now, this brings up an interesting point about flexibility.
While a good range of motion is generally a good thing,
All right.
being too flexible can actually be a problem.
Wait, really? I always thought that more flexibility was always better.
Yeah.
What's the downside of being, like, super bendy?
Well, there's this condition called hyperlaxity,
Okay.
which basically means being overly flexible.
Okay.
And while it might sound impressive, it can actually make your joints less stable.
Oh.
Imagine a building with like loose or weak foundations, right? It's
Yeah.
it's more likely to wobble and maybe collapse. It's kind of the same with our bodies.
Oh, okay, I get it. So it's all about finding that sweet spot, right?
Yeah,
Enough flexibility to move freely, but also enough strength to keep everything stable.
you nailed it. That's why it's so important to focus on building strength alongside flexibility, especially if you tend to be hypermobile. It's like having a powerful engine in a car with excellent suspension. You kind of need both for optimal performance.
This is fascinating. We often hear about the importance of flexibility, but we don't always talk about the role of strength in supporting that flexibility.
It's a crucial piece of the puzzle. Now, are you ready for another mind-blowing aspect of stretching?
Hit me with it. I'm loving all these stretching revelations.
All right, so it turns out that stretching doesn't just impact our muscles and tendons, it also affects our nervous systems.
Whoa, our nervous systems. Okay. Now, I'm really intrigued. I thought stretching was mainly a physical thing. How does it involve, like, our brains and nerves?
Well, think about it this way. When we stretch, we're sending signals to our brains about the sensations we're experiencing, right?
Okay.
And over time, stretching actually helps our nervous system become less sensitive to that discomfort of stretching, which allows us to achieve a greater range of motion.
So it's like we're training our brains to be less reactive to the feeling of a stretch.
Exactly. And this desensitization, it has a ripple effect. It actually helps smooth out our movements and make us less prone to those sudden, jerky reactions that can lead to injuries.
Wait, so stretching can actually make us less clumsy and less likely to get hurt? That's amazing.
It really is. It's all about improving our body's overall ability to move efficiently and safely.
This is blowing my mind. I always thought of stretching as a way to, increase flexibility, maybe prevent some soreness, but this neurological connection adds a whole new dimension.
Yeah, and here's what's even more fascinating. Some researchers believe that this increased pain tolerance, right, that
Yeah.
you get from stretching might not be limited to just flexibility. It could potentially have broader applications for pain management in general.
Are you saying that stretching could help people who suffer from, like, chronic pain?
It's an area of ongoing research.
Okay.
But there's growing evidence to suggest that stretching, particularly practices like yoga and Pilates that combine stretching with mindful movement,
Yeah.
might offer some benefits for managing chronic pain.
Okay, I'm officially convinced that stretching is way more powerful than I ever gave it credit for. It's like a secret weapon for strength, flexibility, injury prevention, and maybe even pain management.
It's a pretty incredible tool. Now let's get practical for a moment.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the science, but what are the best ways to actually stretch? What kinds of stretches should people be doing?
Yeah, let's break it down. I know you mentioned a few different types of stretching earlier, like static, dynamic, and ballistic.
Mhm.
Can you walk us through those and maybe some other cool techniques?
Absolutely. Let's start with static stretching, which is probably the most familiar type.
Yeah.
It involves holding a position for a certain length of time, usually between 30 to 60 seconds.
Right, like reaching down to touch your toes and holding that position. I've always heard that's a good way to cool down after a workout.
That's actually a common misconception.
Oh, really?
Believe it or not, static stretching is more effective when done before exercise, not after.
Wait, seriously? I've been doing it wrong this whole time.
You're not alone. A lot of people think of static stretching as a cool-down activity,
Yeah.
but it's actually better suited for preparing your muscles for activity.
Okay.
By holding those stretches, you're increasing blood flow, improving range of motion,
Right.
and reducing muscle stiffness, all of which can help you perform better and reduce your risk of injury during your workout.
So if I'm about to hit the gym, I should do some static stretches beforehand. not afterward.
Got it.
Uh,
What about dynamic stretching?
so dynamic stretching, it's all about movement.
Mm.
It involves controlled movements through a full range of motion,
Okay.
like arm circles, leg swings, torso twists, things like that.
Okay, so more like a warm-up routine.
Exactly. Dynamic stretching is fantastic for getting your blood pumping and your joints lubricated before any kind of activity.
Right.
It helps improve mobility and prepare your body for more intense movements.
So static for pre-workout prep
Mhm.
and dynamic for warming up.
Got it. Now, what about ballistic stretching? You mentioned it earlier, and it sounded kind of intense.
Yeah, so ballistic stretching, it involves using momentum to force your body into a stretch, often with bouncing or jerky movements.
Okay.
And it's not generally recommended because it can put a lot of stress on your muscles and tendons, especially if you're not properly warmed up.
Yeah. I've seen people do that at the gym, and it always makes me cringe a little bit.
Yeah, I don't blame you. It can look pretty scary, and it's not worth the risk.
Mm.
Remember all that talk about viscoelasticity?
Yeah.
Muscles need time to adapt to stretching forces, and ballistic stretching applies those forces way too quickly, which can lead to strains or tears.
Got it. So stick with static and dynamic and avoid ballistic like the plague.
Hmm.
Got it. Are there any other cool stretching techniques out there? I'm loving all this new information.
There is one that's particularly interesting called proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, or PNF for short.
PNF. Okay, that sounds pretty technical. Break it down for me. What's so special about PNF?
So PNF is a technique that involves contracting a muscle before you stretch it. Wait, you tense up the muscle and then stretch it? How does that even work?
It might sound counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but it's a clever way to kind of use your nervous system to your advantage.
Okay.
That initial contraction actually triggers a reflex
Yeah.
that allows the muscle to relax and stretch further afterwards.
So it's like tricking your muscles into becoming more flexible.
Exactly. PNF is a more advanced technique that's often used by athletes and physical therapists, but it can be very effective for increasing range of motion and flexibility.
PNF. I'm filing that away for later. All right, we've covered a lot of ground here with the different types of stretching,
Yeah.
but I'm curious, are there any common stretching myths that you want to bust?
Oh, absolutely. There are tons of myths floating around about stretching. One of the most persistent ones is that stretching before exercise can actually decrease performance.
Yeah, I've heard that one too. Does it actually hold any water? Not really. While static stretching right before a high-intensity activity might slightly reduce peak power output for a short period,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to have a significant impact on overall performance.
So doing some stretches before my run isn't going to suddenly make me slower.
Nope. In fact, stretching before exercise can actually improve your performance by increasing range of motion and reducing your risk of injury.
Okay.
It's all about finding the right balance and listening to your body.
Makes sense. What about another big one? Stretching prevents muscle soreness. True or false?
I wish it were true,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, that one's mostly false.
Oh.
While stretching can definitely help reduce muscle stiffness, it doesn't seem to have a major impact on that delayed onset muscle soreness or DOMS that you feel a day or two after a tough workout.
So no matter how much I stretch, I'm still going to feel those post-workout aches.
Most likely, yes.
Okay.
Muscle soreness is a natural part of the muscle recovery process,
Yep.
but don't worry, stretching can still help to alleviate some of that stiffness and discomfort.
Okay, good to know. So we've debunked some myths, explored different stretching styles, but let's zoom out a bit
Yeah.
and talk about the bigger picture.
Yeah.
How does stretching fit into like overall health and well-being?
That's a great question. You know, we often think of stretching as just a physical activity,
Right.
but it actually has profound impacts on our mental and emotional well-being, too.
That's interesting. Tell me more about that connection.
Well, for starters, stretching can be incredibly effective at reducing stress and tension.
Okay.
When we stretch, we're releasing physical tension, which can have this cascading calming effect on our minds as well.
I've definitely noticed that after a good yoga class, I feel more relaxed and centered. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Exactly. Stretching can be a powerful tool for managing stress and promoting overall well-being. It can also help improve sleep quality,
Wow.
boost energy levels, and even enhance your mood.
Wow. It sounds like stretching is more than just a physical exercise. It's like a form of self-care.
Absolutely. By incorporating stretching into our daily routines, we're not just taking care of our bodies,
Right.
but also nurturing our minds and spirits.
Okay, I'm officially convinced I need to make stretching more of a priority in my life.
Yeah.
It's easy to let it slide when I'm busy, but the benefits are just too significant to ignore.
I agree. It's an investment in your long-term health and well-being and doesn't have to be a huge time commitment.
Yeah.
Even a few minutes of dedicated stretching each day can make a world of difference.
All right, before we wrap up, let's dive into some specific stretching techniques
Okay.
and exercises that our listeners can try at home.
Sounds like a plan. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of specific stretches,
Right.
it's important to emphasize that listening to your body is key.
Yeah.
Don't push yourself too hard, especially when you're starting out.
Yeah.
Stretching should feel good, not painful.
Yes, absolutely. It's about gradual progress,
Yeah.
not trying to like contort yourself into a pretzel on day one.
Exactly. Now, let's start with a simple yet effective stretch for the hamstrings.
Okay.
Those muscles at the back of your thighs that tend to get tight.
Oh, those are definitely a trouble spot for me. What's the best way to stretch those out?
A classic hamstring stretch is the seated forward fold.
Okay.
So you sit on the floor with your legs extended in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Slowly bend forward from your hips, reaching towards your toes. The key is to keep your back straight and avoid rounding your spine.
Ah, yes. I love that stretch. It feels so good after a long run.
It's a great way to release tension in the hamstrings and improve flexibility. Now let's move on to the quadriceps, those muscles at the front of your thighs.
Those are important for runners too.
Yeah.
What's a good stretch for the quads?
A classic quad stretch is the standing quad stretch.
Yeah.
Stand tall with your feet hip-width apart. Bend one knee and grab your foot with the opposite hand, gently pulling your heel towards your glutes. Again, maintain good posture and avoid arching your back.
I do that one all the time. It's amazing how much tension can build up in those quads.
Absolutely. Now let's target the hip flexors, those muscles that run along the front of your hips.
Okay.
These often get tight from sitting for long periods.
Ooh, those are definitely culprits for me.
Uh-oh.
What can we do for tight hip flexors?
Hey, a great stretch for the hip flexors is the kneeling hip flexor stretch.
Okay.
So kneel on one knee with the other foot flat on the floor in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Gently push your hips forward, feeling a stretch in the front of your hip. You can also raise your arms overhead for a deeper stretch.
That one always feels so good. It's like a release button for my hips.
It's a fantastic way to open up the hips and improve posture. Now, let's move on to the chest and shoulders.
Yeah.
Areas that can get tight from hunching over computers or phones.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of that. What can we do to counteract all that screen time?
A simple yet effective chest stretch is the doorway stretch.
Okay.
Stand in a doorway with your arms bent at 90-degree angles, placing your forearms on the doorframe. Step forward with one foot, feeling a stretch across your chest and shoulders.
I love how accessible that stretch is. You can literally do it anywhere.
Exactly. It's a great way to counteract that rounded shoulder posture that many of us develop from sitting for long periods.
Yeah.
Now, for the shoulders, a classic stretch is the cross-body shoulder stretch. Simply grasp one arm above your elbow with your opposite hand, gently pulling it across your body until you feel a stretch in your shoulder.
That's one I do instinctively throughout the day. Just it feels so good to release that tension.
It's a great way to relieve shoulder tightness and improve mobility. Now, let's not forget about the back.
Right.
Back pain is a common complaint,
Mhm.
and stretching can play a role in preventing and alleviating it.
For sure. What are some good back stretches?
One classic back stretch is the cat-cow pose.
Okay.
Start on your hands and knees with your back flat. As you inhale, arch your back like a cat, tucking your chin to your chest. As you exhale, round your spine like a cow, dropping your belly toward the floor.
Hmm.
This gentle movement helps to mobilize the spine and release tension.
I love cat cow. It's such a gentle yet effective way to warm up the back.
It's a great option for all levels.
Okay.
Another beneficial back stretch is the lying twist.
Okay.
Lie on your back with your knees bent and your feet flat on the floor. Extend your arms out to the sides, forming a T shape. Then gently drop both knees over to one side, twisting your spine. Hold for a few breaths, then repeat on the other side.
That one feels amazing. It's like a massage for my spine.
It's a wonderful way to release tension and improve spinal mobility. Now, these are just a few examples of stretches that you can incorporate into your routine. Experiment with different stretches and find what feels best for your body.
Remember, consistency is key. Even a few minutes of stretching each day can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of simple stretches throughout the day.
Yeah.
If you're sitting at a desk for long periods, take a few minutes to stand up, stretch your arms overhead, do
Yeah.
some gentle twists. Those micro breaks can go a long way in preventing stiffness and improving overall well-being.
Great advice. So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the surprising science of stretching
Yeah.
to practical tips and techniques.
Yeah.
What's the key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think that the key takeaway is that stretching is more than just a physical activity. It's an investment in our long-term health and well-being. By understanding how stretching impacts our muscles, our tendons, even our brains, we can unlock its full potential for improving flexibility, strength, mobility, and overall quality of life.
Beautifully said. And remember, as with any new exercise routine, it's always a good idea to consult with a healthcare professional, especially if you have any underlying conditions.
Absolutely. So there you have it, folks. The science and benefits of stretching unpacked and ready to be applied to your daily lives.
Now go forth and stretch.
Yeah.
Your body and mind will thank you. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We're still getting bendy, talking about the science and benefits of stretching.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground from muscles and tendons to even the nervous system.
It's wild. And now I'm ready to try some of these stretches myself.
Okay.
What are some good ones people can do, at home?
All right, let's get practical. But first, a little disclaimer. Always listen to your body, right?
Right.
Don't force anything, especially if you're new to stretching. You want to aim for that sweet spot where you feel a good stretch, not pain.
Yeah, words to live by. Nobody wants to pull a muscle trying to get flexible.
Exactly. Okay, so let's start with those pesky hamstrings.
Yeah.
Those muscles at the back of your thighs that seem to tighten up, just by looking at them.
Oh, tell me about it. What's the best way to kind of loosen those up?
One classic move is the seated forward fold. You sit on the floor, legs straight out in front of you.
Right.
And you slowly bend forward from your hips, reaching towards your toes. Key point here. Keep your back straight. No hunching.
Oh, I love that one. Feels amazing after a long run.
It's a hamstring's best friend, honestly. Now let's switch gears to the quadriceps.
Okay.
Those muscles at the front of your thighs, essential for, basically all movement.
Yeah, those are key for runners, too. It's a good way to stretch those out.
The standing quad stretch is a classic. Stand up straight, feet about hip width apart.
Okay.
Bend one knee and grab your foot with the opposite hand, gently pulling your heel towards your glutes. Remember, good posture is key here too.
I do that one all the time.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much tension can build up there without you even realizing it.
Yeah. Our bodies are full of surprises. Speaking of hidden tension, let's not forget about the hip flexors.
Yeah.
Those muscles that run along the front of your hips.
Oh, man, those are my nemesis. All that sitting, it catches up to you.
It really does. A great way to tackle those is the kneeling hip flexor stretch. Kneel down on one knee, other foot flat on the floor in front of you,
Okay.
and gently push your hips forward. You should feel the stretch right where those hip flexors live. Want a deeper stretch? Raise your arms overhead.
That one is a lifesaver. Feels like hitting the reset button on my hips.
It's a great posture booster, too. All right, enough with the legs. Let's move up to the chest and shoulders.
Okay.
Areas that tend to suffer from, too much screen time, let's be honest.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
What can we do to combat that, hunched over the phone posture?
The doorway stretch is a simple but effective chest opener. Stand in a doorway with your arms bent at a 90-degree angle and your forearms resting on the doorframe.
Okay.
Step forward with one foot, and you'll feel the stretch across your chest and shoulders.
I love that one. You can literally do it anywhere.
Exactly. It's a great way to counteract that rounded shoulder look. For a good shoulder stretch, try the cross-body shoulder stretch. Just grab one arm above your elbow with your opposite hand and gently pull it across your body until you feel the stretch in your shoulder.
I do that one without even thinking sometimes. It's so satisfying to release that tension.
It's true.
Yeah.
Our bodies are pretty good at telling us what they need. Now we can't forget about the back.
Right.
Back pain is so common, and stretching can be a great way to prevent and relieve it.
Absolutely. Any back stretches that you recommend?
The cat-cow pose is a classic. Start on your hands and knees with your back flat. As you inhale, arch your back like a cat, tucking your chin to your chest. Then, as you exhale, round your spine like a cow, dropping your belly towards the floor. It's a gentle flow that helps to mobilize your spine and release tension.
Oh, cat-cow's the best. Gentle, yet effective.
And a great option for all levels.
Yeah.
Another good one is the lying twist. Lie on your back with your knees bent and feet flat on the floor. Extend your arms out to the sides, kind of in a T shape.
Okay.
Then gently drop both knees over to one side, twisting your spine. Hold for a few breaths and then repeat on the other side.
Oh, that one feels like a mini massage for your spine.
It's a great way to de-stress and improve spinal mobility. These are just a few ideas to get you started. Explore and see what works best for your body.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about finding what feels good. And remember, consistency is key, right?
Yes.
A few minutes of stretching each day is all it takes to make a difference.
Couldn't agree more. And don't underestimate the power of mini stretches throughout your day.
Oh, yeah.
If you're at a desk for hours, stand up, stretch your arms overhead, do some twists. Those little breaks can work wonders for preventing stiffness and boosting your energy.
So it's not just about dedicated stretching sessions. It's about incorporating stretching into our, everyday lives.
Exactly. Make it a habit, not a chore. And as we've learned today, the benefits go way beyond just flexibility. We're talking strength, injury prevention, better movement, even stress relief. It's a whole body, whole mind approach to well-being.
I don't know about you, but I am feeling inspired to stretch right now.
Me too. Remember,
It's
it's never too late to start, right?
Right.
Listen to your body, find what feels good, and enjoy the journey.
Well, that just about wraps up our deep dive into the amazing world of stretching. Who knew there was so much to learn?
It's been a pleasure exploring it with you. Hopefully our listeners are feeling just as enlightened and ready to get their stretch on.
I hope so. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning and keep stretching those boundaries, both physically and mentally.